Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Yeah. Find your path with the knowledge of others and become an illuminator for those who struggle. Guide their way just by being true and being in alignment because it comes naturally to you. On self-discovery, wisdom, we share to find inspiration with lessons for millions. We hope you listen.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Their Story Matters. I'm here today with the most wonderful Giselle Roeder. We're going to be talking about her life and her books, and believe me, she has got something here that you need to listen to. The Nanaimo magazine puts it that Giselle has had one hell of a life. She's written an extraordinary memoir, and that's actually gone into a trilogy. Her first book, as we don't talk about that, follows her childhood as a year in the war in Germany. She survived the horrors of invasion, violence, displacement, hunger, and serious illness. Separated from her father and forced to care for her siblings, she grew up far too quickly. Despite an interrupted education, she became a physical education teacher and eventually escaped communist East Germany into the West. Not necessarily for the good, but that is coming up. In her second book, Flight into the Unknown, Dia is answering an advertisement from a Canadian man looking for a new mother for his young daughter. 7 months later, she immigrates to Canada, enters a marriage filled with financial hardship, emotional struggles, and betrayal. After 20 years of marriage, she loses everything and returns to Vancouver to start again. And in her third book, Set Sail for Life After 50, which is a work in process, exploring single life, healing, and the courage to create to start a new life. Now, this is not the only books that she has written. She has written quite considerably more, and we will be touching on them today. But I think when you're a person that has had to come from resilience and tenacity and face the worst of mankind, but it also shows you the best as well. There's always a double side to it. It cannot help but kind of build sustainability that cannot be unbroken. And she's a true example of this. Turning 93 young next year, she's still got all the oomph and joy and resilience of life, and is truly there to participate in it, not sitting back and letting it pass her by, and a wonderful sense of just life. And I think a great example for everybody else out there. Never give up, never give in. There's always another path to take. And we're going to be going down a few of her paths today. So welcome to the show, Giselle.
Oh, thank you so much. That was quite an introduction.
We're in a time where people are revisiting Nazism, and we have a certain president in a country that wants to be the next Hitler and everything else.
Oh.
Right? And it's like the ignorance of this is that they do not register the atrocities that went on. And as a young Jewish girl in Germany, as this is breaking out, it had to be absolutely terrifying.
I wasn't a Jewish girl.
Sorry, no?
No, I was not a Jewish girl.
Okay. German?
We hid them.
Bravo, you hid them.
Yeah, no,
yes.
No, we were ordinary Lutheran, normal people.
But you chose a side.
But my mother she was supposed to marry a Jew, but this Jew didn't even know he was a Jew. Because his father, her father, over a card game, lost his daughter to this man who wanted to marry her.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so with the handshake,
like cattle. Yeah.
Yeah, and my mother fell in love with another man, right? From another village. And that was a funny thing because she was at a dance with a later born uncle of my father, but they were the same age. So the mother the grandma had a late baby. And she was, yeah. And so the nephew was about the same age, within 1 year. And so they were at the dance, and the other one was called Fritzy, or Fritz. And she had a white dress on. And I remember as a child, she had a lot of white dresses with stitchings.
Hmm.
She had been in a school where she learned all that.
Right.
So it was quite a beautiful dress, but white all the way. And my father was at that dance too, and he saw that she had a red spot on her seat. So she had, well, her period had come without her knowing it, right?
Which
And
happens,
it
yes.
was, and my father saw that and went up to them and said, "May I cut in?" to his uncle, you
Hmm.
know. And my mother turned around and got into his arm, but instead of dancing with her, he walked behind her and led her out of the door towards the
That's
washroom.
with such
And
respect. Yeah.
yeah, and said, "Check your dress."
Mm,
And it was very embarrassing
of
for my
course.
mom.
It's happened to me. I know.
Oh
You want to
yeah,
hold,
and
follow,
she
swallow you
didn't
up.
know this guy, but
Right.
my father was a very good-looking man,
Hmm.
and so when she was finished, and she came out and apologized, and he apologized, and he said, "I'll bring you home." So he walked her home, and naturally, she fell in love with him, right? She loved this guy. And they talked on the way back in the dark, right?
Hmm.
And so they made another date and they met again and they met again. And so my mom really was into it and he was too. So, make a long story short, she did not marry that man that her father had picked. He was,
Good for her.
my father was a tradesman. Well, he was a businessman. He sold land machines like
Hmm.
threshers and whatever but, farmers needed, and also shoot horses. And he was a smith, a master smith. And he always had four young people working with him, apprentices.
Right.
As in Germany, you have to apprentice for a job, 3 years, and then go
Which I
and
think
be
is an excellent way
away.
to
And
go.
yeah,
Yes.
that's the way it still is.
Hmm.
And so anyway, after 2 years, they finally came out with it.
Hmm.
And that was, it all happened in 33, in 32, and in 34. 33, they told her parents, and they said, "We don't agree.
Hmm.
You deserve, to marry this rich man who had a beautiful, I have seen it, beautiful villa in a park. And he was a bit older than she was.
Hmm.
But no, no, she wanted this poor guy from the next village."
Real love.
Yeah, it was a big love. And finally, they got married. And at the wedding, was mainly her relatives. They were teasing him. And her sister, in the meantime, had come up also with a man from that village, but a chicken farmer. He had 4,000 chickens, and
Hmm.
it was very important because he sold the eggs, to all kinds of
Right.
shops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was wealthy, and my father was not wealthy. And so this teasing went on, and they said, Robert, that was the other guy, he could give his wife a horse, but you can only give her a whip. And my father, that was the worst.
Hmm.
And everybody laughed, and there were over 30 people, and everybody laughed. And he got up, he took her hand, they got up and walked out. And that was it. So she was disinherited.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they did not have any contact until I was born. And then my grandma, her mother, was mad because my father lived with his mother and still was in charge of his younger sister, who was only 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
my aunt,
Mm-hmm.
actually my aunt. And her name was Martha. And they called me Gisela, the German version, Emma, Gisela, Martha, Emma. And Emma was the mother's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother's mother was mad because she felt her name should have come first.
Right.
So Gisela, Emma, Martha, not
Mm-hmm.
Martha, Emma.
Mm-hmm.
And then my partner, Trevor, he said, "Oh, if they had done that, you would have been a real gem." GEM, right?
Right.
And now it's GME. Anyway, that's the background story with my parents. But my parents were very happy together. And my mother was a very hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to cook for all these people that worked in my father's
Mm-hmm.
business. One of them lived with us. And so life went on. I was born 2 years later. Another girl came. And only because my father's sister had a boy 1 year before me. So
Mm-hmm.
he wanted a boy, right?
Right, of
Like
course.
all men want a boy.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I didn't want to be a boy, so I became a girl.
Mm.
And 2 years later, my aunt had another boy. So my father had hope again, and another sister was born. And, and so it went on another 2 years down the road. And Tudi had another boy, the third one.
Oh,
And
gosh.
my father thought, heavens, I want a boy too, and to inherit my business, which he had really built up. And well, you guessed it, there was another girl, the third one. And so they talked about changing one. And I didn't want to change because I loved my parents. They were perfect
Mm.
for me, right? And the boys didn't want to change either.
No, these are our parents. No.
But they always spent 6 weeks with us during the holidays in the
Mm.
summer. And we grew up
Oh, lovely.
very,
Mm.
very happy. It was a very happy time. And then Hitler came to power.
Right.
And I don't have to go into that history because most people probably know.
Yes, and if they don't, they should do. Yes.
Yeah, so he won an election. In an election, he won 111 seats out of whatever. So he became very strong. And the then man who was in charge of Germany was in his 80s. And the Kaiser was gone right after the First World War. And my book starts after the First World War
Hmm.
and how Hitler made
Right,
it.
Rose.
Yeah. Anyway, jump forward again. Um, so Hitler took power. The old man gave up. He saw what Hitler was after,
Yeah.
but he was 87 and he
Hmm.
had to step back. Hitler became too strong. And then the Crystal Night, when they smashed, his party grew by leaps
Mm.
and bounds.
Ah, yes. I never
Yeah,
understand it,
it's
but yeah.
similar. It's similar to what's
Hmm.
happening in Germany right now
And what's happening
with
in the
the
States or trying
so-called
to happen. Mm.
AFD,
Yes.
the radicals, right? And weirdly enough, I have lived my teenage years and my up to about 20 in East Germany and studied there, went to school there, and studied in Leipzig and graduated, came back, had a job. But I'm really jumping forward here. when Hitler came, we learned, I was very young, and my father always listened to Churchill in the evenings at the
Mm-hmm.
1 o'clock on our little radio.
Yeah.
And we would sit huddled around it, and
Mm-hmm.
listen. And he told me, you never, ever talk about what you hear at home.
Right.
If you do, they come
Mm-hmm.
and pick me up, and you will never see me again. Now,
Right.
I loved my dad. I wanted to marry him when I grew up because I felt mom wasn't even good enough for him, right? And I was about 5 when I thought that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in 39. And he and his friend, who owned the Gasthaus, Gasthof in German, it was a restaurant. Um, they were talking that they may be conscripted. And I remember holding his hand and looking up to him and thinking, no, don't go, don't
Yeah.
go. I want to marry you. And I
Yeah.
grew up.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that was in 39. In 38, the Crystal Night, they smashed all the Jewish shops in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And I just recently saw a documentary on TV, and it was horrible. It was
Yes.
absolutely horrible. And now going back to this man that she was supposed to marry,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of turns up in my first few chapters.
Mm-hmm.
When the Nazis came to power around 36, 37,
Mm-hmm.
um, they checked everybody's Aryan parenthood, like who came
Right.
before you and before
Right.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
they found out that this man had a Hungarian great grandmother who was Jewish, but
And that was enough for them.
he
Right. Yeah.
didn't know, right?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And he was Lutheran, like we all were.
Yeah.
And so they found out. Now, by that time, he had been already a high officer in the Nazi army,
Wow.
in the starting army, right? And you know what they did? They hanged him on his own door frame in his villa. And I remember the first time when my mom told me about this, we walked by there, and she said, if I would have married that guy, um,
Or
either
had any children by
we
him.
would all be going
Yes.
to camp,
Yes.
and because these Holocaust camps, they were not first for the Nazis, they were for the communists.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Hitler started and his crew, they came up with the idea the Jews are our fault, right? So
Right.
it became more known as the Jewish. Anyhow, so that's really the background. And then life goes on, and my father wasn't conscripted until I think it was 43. And he was sent to Italy to train because he wasn't a soldier, right? He
Mm-hmm.
had to learn.
Right. Exactly.
And he was several months in Italy and Sicily, and he loved Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
I later bought him a whole section, it was 5 books about Italy and everything.
It's one of my
And
favorite countries.
yeah, and I gave him that as a gift much, much later when they printed books again, or when we could buy books again. And so when he came back, he came home, and then he said just a 5-day leave, and then he would have to go to France. And he left a gift with my mother. I didn't quite understand what it meant, but we knew the next year when the little sister was born, the fourth one. And in France, he was shot through his right arm,
Uh-huh.
and he would have bled to death if not a French lady would have found him.
Right.
And she took him in. He hid him, and took care of this wound and healed it. And we started getting beautiful sweaters, always
Mhm.
two the same for myself and my next sister. And they went later to the next sister's one.
Mhm.
And we thought, and he had told my mother in one of the letters that this lady is really good to him. And we thought maybe he loves her more than us and he doesn't
Mm.
come back.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's in between.
Mhm.
But he did go back to his army when his arm was better.
Mhm.
And I don't know what he told them because he always said, oh, we don't talk about that.
Right.
There was a
Right.
lot of stuff. We just, no, no, we
My
don't.
dad was like that too.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
couldn't get anything out of him about the war.
no, we don't talk about that. And so he came home and he was not fit to be a soldier anymore because
Hmm.
he couldn't got a gun, and
Right.
couldn't use the right arm. But Sarah, he could shoe horses.
Just as long as nobody was looking.
It was just, we were so happy that he was back, right? And
Yeah, because I'm sure that he was fighting a war he didn't even believe in.
he told me once, he called me Gila. Gila, I could never have shot at anybody, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Hmm.
I couldn't have done it. And
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that I was wounded and came home.
Yeah.
And the chicken farmer, he had applied to be free to stay home. Otherwise, he couldn't deliver the required quota of eggs to the army
Exactly. Yeah.
because they wanted 4,000 or 20,000 chickens he had. They wanted 4,000 eggs each month for the army. Right?
Right.
And so he was at home too. Well, life went on. We kids, we were not allowed to play with the um, workers' kids in the village.
Mm.
My parents always said, oh, you have a nice playground. We had a little carousel from a wagon wheel. We had
Right.
a big swing. And so we had everything. But we wanted kids our own age, right?
Yeah.
So then let's get through the war, through the pre-war times, because there were alarms and then the bombers came. And,
Yes.
once a bomb fell close 2 houses from us
Wow.
in a duck pond.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
next day, we were all sitting just in the ditch down below. We didn't have a bunker or
Right, of course.
a cellar or something, right? And there were lots of people. We was all sitting along this ditch because after the ditch there was the mill hill, and there used to be a windmill up there, but the lightning had
Uh-huh.
taken care of that one. But the kids, we loved the mill hill because for sleighing it was fantastic.
Hmm.
Pull the sleigh up and down into our ditch. It was great. Anyway, from the church tower, that's where the alarm was installed. When that alarm came and we had our clothing beside our bed,
Yes. Yes.
we had to grab that and run,
Hmm.
leave the house and down to the
Yeah.
beach and got dressed on the way or when we
Yes.
down there. And then my father applied because his young men that learned from him, they were all conscripted, so he needed help. So he applied for help and he got a Polish guy. And Peter Kaczmarek, I don't think he is alive anymore because he was 6 or 7 years older than I was at the time. And I asked him once, why don't you run away? Because my parents had built one of the barn rooms, a wonderful room for him. I mean, it
Mhm.
was so, I always said, when I grow up, I want that room. And in the front, in the entrance, there was a chair like the Red Cross gives you now when you can't go to the toilet, and it's
Right.
close to
Yes.
your bed.
Yes. Yes.
And so he had a toilet thing there. We didn't have that. We had to go out.
Yes. Into
Or
the latrine.
we had
Yeah.
an outhouse.
Yes.
And at night, when we had to pee, there was a pot under our bed.
Yes. A potty. Yes. Yeah.
And then there was a pail in the kitchen,
Mm.
that we could also use if it needed, if it was needed. Anyway, Peter said to me, no, why should I run away? I have it so good here. If I run
Exactly.
away, either the Germans shoot me
Mm.
or the Russians will,
Mm.
because by that time, the Russians had invaded East Prussia already.
Mm.
And they came through Poland, East Prussia, and all these people who ran away from the Russians. And these
Mm.
East Prussians, they had covered wagons, like gypsies. And you have to stop me when I get too
No, no,
into
please
too much
carry on
detail.
telling the story. You're painting the picture.
And so we had our village had 1,000 people, including kids.
Mhm.
And in no time, we were 4 or 5,000 because all these people who were fleeing from the Russians,
Right.
they came west, right through,
Hmm.
and we had several in the barn. Everybody did, and they were happy that they had a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
And they would sit in the ditches with us.
Mm.
And some of them, or most of them, kept on going west, and they were the smart ones. And I remember one night we were sitting in that ditch, and the phosphor bombs, I don't know if you know what they look like. They are
Mm.
like red Christmas trees.
Hmm.
They were dancing in the sky, and we were only 50 kilometers from Berlin as the crow
Mm.
flies.
Right.
And Berlin, that was the worst bombing night that Berlin ever had.
Hmm.
And these phosphor bombs, they would set things on fire. We tried to count them, but we couldn't count them. There
Yeah.
were too many, right?
Hmm.
And they were like dancing. And later in life, I met a lady, Mrs. Drager, and she was from Berlin. And I worked with her in the same office. And she told me that when these phosphor bombs started, people ran away and they jumped into the river. But if you caught the flame, no water can
Mm.
take care of it. So they kept burning. And she said, I saw my parents crawl out from a crumbling building, and the phosphor bombs fell, and they were on fire. And I was a few meters away, and I couldn't help them. And I had to see them burn to death.
Oh.
And
Ah.
from her, I heard a lot of things that went on in Berlin.
Yes.
Anyhow, finally, the Russians arrived at our place.
Mm.
And my father's friend, who had the guest house
Mhm.
owner, he came by with a carriage and his mother. He wasn't married. I always thought he would marry one of my aunts, right? The two youngest ones. And he said, "Come, Erich, come, let's get out of here before. Take your kids and your wife and let's go. Just let's go." And
Mhm.
my father said, "Fritz, there is no use because we are almost surrounded and we will never get through. The Germans will shoot us."
Yes.
So Fritz went off. My father stayed, but he told us about it. All of us, even our evacuees. We also had a woman from Berlin with her daughter who became my best friend. And an hour later, Fritz came back, and I happened to be in the workshop with my father and Peter. And Fritz came in, snow white, and said, Eric, it's too late. We are surrounded.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister Crystal, she was always so afraid of thunderstorms.
Mm-hmm. God, we have all that going
Oh,
on ahead.
yeah, the noise, right? And
Yes.
now for a whole week, this thunder
Yeah.
was going on, and she was creeping under the couches or wherever
Yeah.
she would go.
Traumatizing. Yes.
She was so afraid. She was only 7. And well, just a couple of days later, they marched into our village. And there's one interesting tidbit. We had one disabled person, as we call him now, Otto. And Otto lived with his grandmother. He was 21, with his grandmother in the poorhouse because he had no parents but
Right.
grandma. And he wasn't quite right. We always said he didn't have all his cups in his cupboard. Here they said he isn't the sharpest knife in the
Right.
drawer, right? And we kids called him Otto Puff, because he had these wooden shoes, sandals kind of, um, and he would throw, like with a foot, throw
Yeah.
one,
You click it
he
off.
had
Yeah.
to pick it off, and he would say, Otto Puff, Puff, and run after his clog and pick it up and do it again and again. And we kids, my father caught me once. I was in the group running after Otto Puff, yelling, Otto Puff. And he said, if I ever see
Mm-hmm.
you again doing that, I will take my own clock and
Mm.
really give it to you.
Good for your dad. He
So I
recognized that.
never,
Yeah.
never, no, when the Russians came, and I was the first one who saw them,
Mm.
because our house, the business was lower and the house was a little higher, on a hill, 100 meter maybe from the street. And I climbed up on a chair and looked out of the upper window, the part of, that you couldn't
Mm.
open that.
Yeah.
And I saw them coming down the road from the next. And I fell down from that chair, and my skirt, girls didn't have pants.
No, no.
Even for sleighing, we had to wear
Right.
skirts. And that part between
Yeah.
the
Tucked into the
straps and
knickers.
the panties was always so cold.
Yes.
Anyhow, the Russians are coming. There's so many, just like a long snake from Bad
Mm.
Fleece. That's where my mom was from. And my father just called everybody into the living room and said, just sit still. Don't do anything. Be quiet. Don't yell. Don't cry. Don't. So my sister Crystal, and the third one, Ingrid, they were sitting on the couch with my granny, had them in both arms. I was standing where my father was. I always was
Mm.
where he was. And the Berlin lady was there with her daughter, who was my age. They were sitting there. Peter was there, but Granny wasn't at that time. Granny wasn't there. So my father told Peter, check where Granny is.
Mhm.
And he went all around and yelled and asked, Omi, 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 that's
Mhm.
we called her. And Peter did too. He was part of he was Polish,
Right.
but he was part of our
Yeah.
family. And then she came out of the garage. My father was the first one who had a car, and that's another story.
Mhm.
And we also had a horse, and that's another story, or an upcoming story. And she came out, and in the garage, there was a ladder going up to the hay loft
Yes.
where hay was stored
Yeah.
for the winter. And my father said, Mother, what have you done? Well, the Russians are coming. They're any minute entering the house. And it's my business, she said. It's my business. Okay. And then we heard them coming through the house from the front. And we were sitting in the back part, because the front part was my granny suite, right? And the
Mhm.
back part was the working family. And so we heard them coming, and I knew the way the floors squeaked.
Mm-hmm.
I knew exactly where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And the door between our living room and the bed, the master bedroom, had been taken out a long time ago, and there was just double curtains from either side, heavy brocade
Mm-hmm.
curtain to keep the bedroom cool over the winter and the living room warm because we had this oven in the corner, right?
Right.
There was no electric or whatever. And the bedroom used to have a basement underneath. And my father's father had already started filling it in, but they never had enough rocks or something.
Mm.
So the floors always squeaked when you walked across it.
Right.
And that's where the Russians came in. And then the bayonet came through that curtain.
Oh.
And with the bayonet, the curtain was put aside. And
Mm.
here we saw our first Russians. And they were Mongolians, so they looked different.
Right.
And this was on the 1st of February, 45. Winter outside, the heavy uniforms, thick, those Russian
Yeah.
caps.
Hats. Yeah.
And we stared at them and they stared at us. We were
Mm-hmm.
just sitting all very still. And all with those bayonets, right? There were 7 of them. And I really held on to father's hand. And then he said something, and Peter and my father, they held the arms up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had this big old grandfather clock in the corner, and it chimed 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they said, Uri, Uri. And we didn't know what they meant. Uri, Uri, Uri. And when the clock chimed, when that old thing chimed, they said, Uri, Uri, getting smaller, right?
Right.
Oh, Ur in German is Ur, and Uri, the Russians' way, they meant little ones.
Oh.
So my father never wore one because of his work.
Mm-hmm.
But one of them had a watch
What?
and handed it over, and the one of them had a brown paper bag. So there was all kinds of stuff in already. And also our alarm clock from the bedroom was in there already. And
Why did they want the watches?
they want watches. Oh, they always wanted watches because
Why?
they didn't have any.
Oh, so it wasn't a precaution like taking cell phones today. It's just they
Oh,
wanted
yeah,
one.
they were, these
Right.
Russians, they were poor. Stalin did not spoil them.
Right.
And in 6 years of war, they never ever had a leave. And that's why
Yes.
and that's why they were so crazy about women, right?
Oh, yes.
And the
Yes.
raping. That night the raping went on.
Oh.
And my grandma, we just the 6 of us were in the master bedroom in the 2 beds side by side. My father, my mother, and Crystal and I at the foot end, and
Mm,
Ingrid in the middle, and the baby next to my mom. And she wasn't even not a year old, right? And so in the middle of the night, we heard this yelling and screaming going on. And then we had an East Persian grandpa with 2 um, granddaughters in their 20s, early 20s. And we had given them our dining room to sleep in. We put
mm.
beds in there. And these girls, these ladies, they screamed hell and murder. And then we heard our house door open and something was thrown out and then closed with a thud. And the girls were quieter, but Russians kept raping them, some of them, right? And the grandpa had tried to
Stop them.
protect his
Of course.
granddaughters, and so they had killed him and threw him
Oh,
outside. We found
oh,
him the next morning in the snow, frozen stiff. Right?
oh.
It was just a horrible night. And then one of these Russians sneaked around the beds to my mother's side and crawled in bed with her. And I knew already. I mean, I
Mm,
was just 11. I had just had
mm,
my birthday a couple of weeks before. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to do that to my mom.
yes.
And my father and my mama, I heard her whisper to my dad, don't do anything. Whatever happens to me, let it happen as long
Yeah.
as we are alive after.
Right.
Well, he was in there, and it didn't take long. I heard him cry. And I thought, why would the soldier cry? Right?
Hmm.
That's weird. And then he got out. Well, they never undressed. They always had the
Yeah.
fists to fly open. Right? And so when he was gone, my mom said to my dad, he must have been a young, very young guy, maybe 19 or something. And he lost it. So I wasn't raped. And
Mm.
I lost it. I didn't know what that meant. Right?
Yeah.
Later, I learned much later what that
Yeah.
meant. He lost it and cried, and my mother stroked his head, so he was okay and didn't kill anyone. Right?
Right.
Anyway, they went from the living room, some of them, with their bag, towards the kitchen and then to the other side, to the dining room, where this whole thing with the two East Persian girls, Helen and Betty, I'll never forget, happened. And somehow the alarm clock started ringing in that bag.
The bag.
So they threw the bag down and the door was open. That happened before that night, right? And they were shooting it back. And we had trouble not to laugh, right? And my
Yeah.
father always was, don't laugh, he's going to shoot us too.
Hmm.
So anyway, and after that, this happened with the grandpa. And so that was the first day. That night, we still were all in our house. The next day, they came and we all had to come to go to a neighbor's place. And their boy, Alfred, was in my class. So I knew Kutscher, Alfred Kutscher.
Hmm.
And we all had to go there. And we were herded like sheep, with
Hmm.
guns instead of dogs. And we had to line up around their pile of manure. And I remember before the parents always said, oh, yeah, the farmer with the biggest manure pile is the richest one,
Right.
because he had the most cows and stuff.
Yeah.
We only had two, but enough for us. Right? So we had to stand there and we didn't know what was happening. I, again, very close to my dad and mom and the other kids, all close. And then they brought out a naked man and put him on the middle of that pile of manure, and it was Alfred's father. And he had been home on leave
Oh,
and had no chance to go back.
right.
So what he did, stupidly, he hid his uniform. But he was just a simple soldier. He was not an officer or something.
Exactly. But they didn't care.
No, but they found
The uniform.
the uniform. And one of the high Russians, he spoke some German, and he said, this man is a Nazi. And what happens to him now is going to happen to all of you if you did what he did to hide that you're a Nazi. And there was a murmur going through, the people, but he, right, right. And then they brought out his wife and Alfred, and he had a little sister, 4-year-old sister, and they were on one side of this pile of manure, and then they stuck a fork in the middle of, and they bound this man on this fork that was used to bring the
Right.
manure out, right? And he had so many red streaks on his back already that I thought, oh my God, they must have really hit him. And
Hmm.
they did. And they started hitting him more. And
Hmm.
one of the Russians bent down and cut his penis off. And
Oh,
yeah, and the other parts, and the men had tried to take the beating, but then he started screaming. And my grandma always took us to church every Sunday. My parents didn't go, but my granny was religious and she was alone. And,
hmm.
lonely people go to church because it's a social thing too.
Yes.
Afterwards, coffee, And I thought that's how Jesus must have screamed on the cross.
Hmm.
Father, why did you forgo me? Why did
Yeah.
you leave me? And this man screamed and screamed, and his wife started screaming. So another guy held the gun in front of her and said, quiet. And the kids, we were all so shocked.
God, yes.
And I started crying, and my father put my head, my face into his belly.
Mm.
Not so loud, not so loud, he shoots us. So that was our lecture of not hiding anything Nazi. So and then
Well,
we
what
could
about your
go.
dad's uniform?
But it was horrible. It was probably one of the most terrible
Yes.
time I lived through as a kid, 11-year-old kid. And everybody walked home, but now we also saw other neighbors, right, on the way home. And they were telling what they
I,
had gone through the night before. And
hmm.
there was one girl that was in grade 8, but she only had sprouted one breast, right? Funny enough.
Hmm.
And her name was Ruth, and she was also a kid from East Prussia or somewhere. But they had raped her 16 times,
Ah,
16 soldiers. They stood in line,
ah,
and then she died. So
of course.
yeah, and we heard that. I mean, this kid was 14. No, I was 11. She was 12 years old, right? But they didn't care
No.
if my mother's mother in the next village, she was raped on the stairway to her attic. She tried to get away, and she had horrible varicose veins, and they burst.
Oh,
And it it was just a time that you don't want to live through again.
no, God, no.
No,
And something you
and
cannot, whether you like to or not,
yeah,
can
and
never forget.
there were others, and funny enough, they knew that they had seen one of the Nazis in uniform, and he had disappeared, and he had gone into one of the houses and asked for private clothing,
Mm.
for civil clothing, and he was they came in and he was under the bed, and they knew that he must be in there, and they started poking with their bayonets until they got him and found him and stabbed him to death. And the family with 3 kids, they were all killed. And
Oh, God,
that's
the whole
what,
family?
oh yeah. Well, they didn't mind.
No.
The life was nothing.
I mean, you think
And
6 years of war with no break, no nothing, I mean, people say they're animals, but no, animals don't do that to each other,
no,
right?
no,
They just had become no sense of conscience at
no,
all. They were
no. A
just
woman was
beasts.
just
Yeah.
Much, much later, if I jump ahead several years
Mm.
now, 2 years maybe. No, not even that. Um, maybe I should be in line. No, jump forward. Anyway, that we heard all that on the way back home. And then my father, then they came with a order that my father should let him give him the key for the car that was in the garage there
Mm.
where the hayloft was above.
Right.
And he said, car would not work because the Nazis had come and picked up the batteries.
Right.
So there
Okay.
was no battery in it,
Mm.
and you couldn't start the car.
Mm.
And we kids, we always were allowed to sit in the car because we loved it,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a gramophone on the back seat with this
Mm.
big speaker. Um, and there was one song we played over and over, and all these records, these
Mm-hmm.
big, big records. And now they came and wanted to get the car. Now, since the car didn't start, they asked for a rope, you know. So
Mm.
my mom gave them her washing line. And so they put the washing line on the car, and some other soldier came back with a horse. Talk about horsepower.
Yeah.
And they pulled the car off with this horse. By that time, our horse was already gone. No, we still had Lottie. And so the car was gone. And it wasn't long after that when everybody had to bring the horses that were not work horses. And our Lottie wasn't. She,
Mm.
she was our horse. I
Yes.
loved Lottie. And I could hardly walk. I had walked into her stall and fell asleep in there. And my father wanted to get me, and she didn't let him. He took me, the baby, not
Mm.
3 years old. And until I woke up and walked out there myself. So
Mm-hmm.
that was okay. But Lottie did not let my dad. And Lottie and dad, they were like this, right?
Yes.
Anyway, so we had to bring Lottie to this place in front of the church. And Lottie was taken because
Mm.
she was not uh, a horse for plowing and
Right.
farmer's work. And she bent her head way down to me, and I thought we will never see Lottie again.
Mm.
And I think Lottie knew it too.
Yes.
And
Yes.
some horses, they reared up when they
Mm.
were loaded onto these trucks, with it. And Lottie just walked up there, head hanging, and she was gone. Anyway, that was the Lottie story. And then the car was gone. And then one day they came and we called her Aunt Erika. That was a woman from Berlin. And she became like my mom's sister or something.
Mm.
And her daughter Ingrid was my age, just about 4 months younger. And they were evacuated because of the bombs, right? And she had started a relationship with one of the officers.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I remember Ingrid and her name, the girl's name was also Ingrid. Ingrid and we had our eyes on our mothers and always watched them. I
Mm.
had never caught my mother to do something
Mm.
because she put a black scarf over her face like this, like
Mm-hmm.
the Muslims, right?
Right.
And she used cigarette paper. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where you can make your own
Cigarettes had
cigarettes.
silver paper in
Yeah.
there, in the boxes, Stuyvesant or something. And she put that over her teeth, and she
To make
looked,
yourself look older.
oh, she was 36, but she was looking so old. And she had to milk the cows for the Russians. They
Mm.
killed all the pigs one after the other.
Mm.
And but they needed milk, and they always gave us a little bit for the baby. So that was nice. And because they worked for them, and they stayed for a whole week, these Russians, and we had to get out of the house, but we had a worker's house uh, next to the garage. That was one long building. It was an attic, and so they said we can get up into the attic and stay, but don't come down during the day.
Right.
And all the rest of the people of the village had to go out. By that time, we had been out once before too. And but we came back and we didn't know where to go, right? And so anyway, that's where we ended up. And my parents' house became the hospital for the Russians,
Mm.
army hospital, right? Because they were wounded Russians.
Hmm.
They wouldn't take care of wounded Nazis that they killed, but
Yeah.
they would just, got another shot or
Yeah.
just let to die. Once the first time we had to get out, we walked about 3 kilometers to another village, and there was a whole group of women standing there already. And we asked if we could join them, and they said, the more the better. The fewer rapes we will have to go through, the more we are.
Right.
But they put us in a house where the officers were on one side. There was a hallway, and we were in the living room on the other side. Ingrid, my sister Ingrid, and Crystal, we slept under a table so nobody could trample on us. We were over
Mm.
40 people in that little living
Wow.
room. And at night, somebody wanted to get into the window, right, and knocked.
Hmm.
Frau, open up, open up. Just one Russian now. Later, many, many Russian. Open up. And we rattled on the other door, and the other Russians heard us,
Hmm.
and they came out. They raced out. By that time, Stalin had already said, no more rapes.
Right.
But they didn't care. I
No.
mean, they had this
What's going to happen to them? Who's going to stop them? Yeah.
he couldn't stop them. And they must have killed him because there was a shot and then it was quiet outside, right? And the Russians came into our room and said, never open a window, never open the door. Anyway, the next day we all had to go out, and I don't know where all people went, but we went back home and were lucky. Our house, a doctor, and he was nice. He spoke some German. And my granny had a bad thumb. She had put it into egg yolk as long as we had eggs, to heal it, but it didn't heal. And he looked at it and said, how do you know that doctor here? And she said, I didn't. But there are uh, 5 kids out there and 2 women, and we don't know where to go. So
Right.
he let us stay in that attic.
Mm.
Anyway, Erica started this thing with this officer, and she told my mom, "Oh, he is doing that so well. You should try it, Elsie." And my mom said, "I love Eric, and I have no desire. And if I don't blame you, if you need that sex, he was only 30 years old,
Hmm.
the Berliner, and if you need that, I don't blame you." And Erika said, and Ingrid, her daughter, and I, we heard that. At least think of it. I protect you and Gila and Ingrid from being raped.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would all be raped. And at least in my case, it's not raped
Right.
because I agree to have that.
Hmm.
So this was one day. And the next day, a Russian came with a big picture of my uncle Kurt, my father's brother. They found this in a fancy Sunday uniform. I don't know what his rank was or something, but I always admired him because he was like my father, also good looking. But
Mm.
He was a soldier. And they found this huge portrait of him that my granny had the day when they came, hidden in this hay. And by that time, the hay was almost gone because it was
Ah,
used.
uh-huh.
So they came to this picture. Now they came, and the doctor was with us in that same room, and it was our children's room.
Mm,
And my father was Snow White.
mhm.
My granny was shaking, right? And my father had told her she should get rid of that picture,
Yeah.
burn it. She couldn't do it because it
No.
was done, right?
Yeah.
So she hid it. And now they said, sorry, but we have to shoot you all because you hid that Nazi picture, the Nazi uniform. And they thought it was my father's picture.
Hmm.
But Peter, the Polish guy who could a little bit of Russian, Polish and Russian,
Hmm.
he said, no, 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 Master not Nazi, not Master okay, Master no Heil Hitler, no, no, not Master. And then they looked and said, "Mm, baby, the Russian word for that, to my granny, and she nodded. So it was her baby boy, grown up
Right.
to be this fancy soldier. Well, anyway, the guy that Aunt Erika slept with, he's he saved us.
Hmm.
He gave an order, and one of the Russians took his, I don't know, was it a pistol or a gun? We were all so afraid, right? And
Yes.
standing around Granny. They shoot her just a little bit
Right.
across the face, but
A surface thing to say they've shot her. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And she fell over, she fainted, fell over, bled, but at least she wasn't killed.
Right.
And they said, don't do that again,
Right.
and it's only because Erika slept with the guy
Right.
regularly.
Hmm.
Anyway, jump a month or two ahead, this same guy, there were two people called Ivan, and we called the older one, the dark Ivan. He had dark hair. And this young one, the blonde Ivan. And that was Aunt Erika's l'amour, right? And he bent down in front of me and brought me a whole, and I had long braids like all German girls, right? We
Hmm.
were not allowed to cut our hair. Only the poor people had short cuts. And
Hmm.
the other ones, they all had braids. So he had a whole handful of fancy, beautiful wrapping
Ribbons?
ribbons. Yeah,
Hmm.
ribbons. All colors. And I thought to myself, who in Strezo, our village, would wrap their gifts in something and have these beautiful ribbons on them? And he said, you want? And I looked at it and shook my head. And then he said, Gila, do you want to go into the barn with me? I show you something very exciting.
Uh,
Now, I knew what that meant.
yes.
And I remember holding my braids and just shaking my head, but not looking at him.
Hmm.
And he put one of his hands on my shoulder and he said, don't worry, you don't have to. You grow up, you're a kid now, but old eyes. Well, I had seen so much, right?
Hmm.
And when war is over, I come back. You grow up, I come back, marry you.
Yes, you do all of these atrocities in my village and then you want me to marry you.
Yeah. And he was 27 at the time. Anyhow, he never came back
Right.
because by
Thank
that
goodness.
time we were all gone, right?
Yes.
But I must admit that I have very often thought of him. And I had a bit of a crush on him because he was a blonde, very good-looking Russian, right? And I was her daughter, and we always had an eye on her mother and this blonde Ivan, but he was nice. He was nice. And after this happening, I wasn't afraid anymore, right?
Right.
And then came the day where they all had an order to leave. So the doctor told us, because he was the only one who spoke a little more German, and he said, war is over, Hitler dead, 30th of April, right? And we off to Berlin. And this blonde Ivan asked Aunt Erika if she wants to come along. They are going by train, many of them. And we said, no, 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 don't, because we thought, what's going to happen to them
Right.
if they are with a train full of Russians, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But they decided, yes, we will go to Berlin. And on the 8th in Potsdam was peace declared, right, as a
Yes.
war end. But the first week of May was still fighting. And by that time, and I learned that later, 10-year-olds, Hitler youth, were fighting the mighty Russians in Berlin. And they were just killed by en masse. And there is a book that I happened to come across once, A Woman in Berlin. And I tell you, if you read that, it was a young journalist who had been stuck in Berlin, and she was in the bunkers with the Germans, and the bombs fell. And one sentence of that book I will never forget. She said, I will rather have 5 Russians on top of me than the American bombs. Now you can imagine what
Yes.
those last days in Berlin were like. So anyway, but another funny story.
Did you ever hear from her again? Did she make it to
Oh
Berlin?
yeah, yeah, they made it. They made it. And I even visited them once later when I was 17. And it's quite an interesting story, from the day the Russians came. I mean, it was just a nice family life before
Right.
they came. We did what kids do, right?
Yeah.
And school and whatever. And
In a lot of ways removed from the war,
yeah,
right?
because
You can't, you weren't in the immersement of it. You may have
for
seen,
us, the
yeah,
big things, the big war happened somewhere else.
yeah,
And we always heard from on the radio, that all the Germans, they were winning, they were winning, they were winning.
yeah,
And all the Germans said, war is finished already, but they don't see it.
you know,
They just kill more people.
yeah,
And when we were in this other village the first time, where the Russians, one wanted to get into the window, right? And when we left there again, by that time, the Germans had blown up all the bridges over the Oder River. So even the German armies that were still on this side couldn't get over anymore.
right, exactly.
And the Russians, they did it because they didn't want the Russians to get over. And they were all mown down. And when we went back home and I had to push the baby carriage, my mother all of a sudden, and she pulled a hand cart, with some
Yes.
stuff on it, and Ingrid sitting on top. And she said, Gila, don't look to the right. Now you tell a kid
Yes, not to look. They're
not to
immediately
look.
going to look. Yeah.
I surely looked to the right. And there was a soldier in German uniform, simple soldier, not an officer, sitting against the fence, his head next to him. And just the body, and then the head, and the legs were on the other side where
Oh my God.
we had to walk through, right? And the
Right.
legs were on that side. This view happened to be such a shock to
Yeah.
me. I could never forget it. And I remember I was probably already in grade 8 or 7 in East, what then became East Germany. And I walked home and I was hungry and tired. And my mother worked. My father was taken to Siberia. And
Your father was taken to Siberia?
oh, yeah, that was one of the I think it was the 16th or 17th of February after the Russians came on the 5th. They took all, first of all, it was the horses, and they took the
Right.
car, and then all the people who were in good health had to come to the same place in front of the church. There was some kind of a place.
Hmm.
And they were sorted out who were good enough to be taken. And all the people from 16 to 60, men and women,
Wow.
were taken into uh, trucks
Siberia.
and
Oh,
taken off when my father was. And my mother could stay because she nursed the baby. She had the baby.
right.
So that baby 80 saved her life.
Right.
Even if nobody wanted another baby anymore,
Right.
especially not a girl.
Right.
But later my father said he was the only one from all the people that were taken that day from our village that came back, who came back.
How long was he gone for?
2 years.
Wow.
And he
The
had
only one to come back.
the only one,
Wow.
none of the others. And the stories he told,
So
and by that
they
time we
decimated your village
not
with all
just
the
our
people.
village, that was everywhere,
Yes.
everybody.
Yeah.
They took everybody. And at first they had to be cleaning up all the bomb debris
Debris. Yeah.
from the airport, from the small airport next to a small place called Königsberg, but that was a different Königsberg, not the big one in
Mm.
in East Prussia. And then they were taken to Siberia. And my father, when we were living in an attic later, when we had walked 3 weeks on the road, when the Polish came and threw us out, because it wasn't the Russians, because the victors, Stalin and,
Yeah.
in Potsdam decided that that whole part of Germany, 1/3 of Germany, with the border being the Oder River and the Neisse River through Silesia, Silesia, and that became the new border of Germany, and everybody living on that side had to get out. 10 minutes out, out. And it was the Polish army that did that to us. 10 minutes out. And my mother, and we were flying through the house, and this little dog had joined us and it was in the way. And my mother said, Gila, put put Bruno in he was brown, so we called him Bruno. We didn't know where he came from, and put him in the barn. And he cried and cried. But we had to hurry up, 10 minutes out. And she yelled and said, take some warm clothes too, because this was in May, middle of May. And so I used a pillowcase, and the
Hmm.
German had pillows. They are about this size, not narrow like here.
Right.
And I stuffed everything in there for each of us. And then my mom said, oh, I need a cookpot. I need a cookpot. And she tried to get back into the house.
Yeah.
And the Pole who stood there took his bayonet and hit her over the back. And then there were 5 steps going up. And she tumbled down the steps into the dirt. And all she did, don't cry, kids, don't cry, don't cry. He's going to shoot us. And crowd through the dirt to us where we were ready with that little cart and the baby carriage, right? So we took off without a cookpot. Anyway, we slept under the trees. We peed and, excuse me, shit
Hmm.
wherever we had to.
Yeah.
Everybody did.
Right.
And there were thousands of people, I
Mm.
think 2.5 million, in a
Wow.
long row trying to
Wow.
get to the Oder River, where the Russians had taken 2 bigger ships and put balls over it and brought little by little people
Yeah.
over to the other side. When Russians came with their trucks or something, they had first right, so they were taken first. We were 3 days at that place without food, without water, without hygiene, there
Mm.
was no such thing anymore, right? And I and Crystal, we had to wait, and we said, well, we go exploring a little bit, like kids want to play.
Mm.
And there was a big shed, or was outdoors in front. My mother's parents had one like that, with all kinds of vehicles under there, farm machinery and cars and stuff, and especially coaches. And people had coaches, not many had cars, right?
Mm.
And so we climbed around, and I opened the coaches have a kind of a thing in the back where some stuff is getting in, and then suitcases on top, right? You have seen that in movies.
Yes.
And I opened one of these, and there was a bag of something, and I felt, my God, that feels like grain. It's wheat or something, right? And I said, Crystal, run back to mom and say, I can carry this. This is too heavy for me, but don't tell anyone
Mm-hmm.
that we found this. So my mom, she went, and my mom came back, and she carried this bag, and it was about at least 10 pounds of wheat
Mm-hmm.
grain, not wheat flour, right?
Right. Yes.
And my mom had been so smart that she had a coffee mill, because we had to ground um, grain to make coffee, because the baby couldn't digest milk anymore, and we didn't get any. So she
Right.
lived on this fake coffee for 3 weeks,
Wow.
and she was just skin and bones. If you see those
Yes.
poor African children suffering,
Yes.
she was skin and bones. So anyway, we ate, each of us, a handful of this grain and chewed that. We lived on that for I don't know how long. Anyway, finally, it was our turn to get over that river with these boats that were pulled back and forth.
Mm.
And on the other side, there was a nice little place, and the people were gone apparently too. They had gone more west because the Russians were coming.
Mm.
And so we found a house that was empty, and we took everything inside, even the cart that could be taken apart,
Right.
the
Yeah.
larger one. And there were the bedrooms, beds were made and everything. And we had our own blankets. So we said, we don't mess up anything, because these people may come back.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a children's room with lots of dolls sitting on a shelf. And
Mm.
my 4-year-old sister, Ingrid, she took one of the dolls and played with it. And then my mother had a chance to warm up some water in a pot.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bathtub. And it took a long time to fill that. And there
Mm-hmm.
was no running water. You had to
Right.
get it from a pump and in the back. And anyway, she based all of us the first time after we
Mm.
had left home after more than 3 weeks. And she was last. And by that time, the water was pretty
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yucky. And the next day, we wanted to leave. We would have loved to stay longer, because there was food in cans and, little bags and things, and oatmeal. And so the first time we had real food,
Yeah.
cooked food,
Mm.
in a long time. And then they said, Mom said, no, we better leave, because if neighbors figure out that somebody lives here, because the smoke that comes out of
Yeah.
this, and she had been smart to have some matches, because it was all under the mattress in that baby buggy. And so maybe my grandma put it in. And she had said she is not going to come. And we were heartbroken and begged her.
Mm.
Bruno crying in that barn like crazy, and we begging Omi, you can't stay here. They
Mm.
shoot you. She said, I don't care what they do with me. I am not leaving. Because if Eric comes back from Russia, what, he has to find me. He has to find us. Well, nobody could find anybody, right? So she stayed, and for several years we had no idea if she would live or die. So my mom was alone with us. So anyway, we left that nice house and marched on. And then diphtheria became rampant. And who gets it? Me. I,
Oh, really?
yeah, we were walking and walking, and next to the Russian war machinery, the trucks and
Yes.
the even uh, big machines and everything. And they were covered, but we were not. And they would look down on us. And I remember locking eyes with one of the guys in one of the trucks. And he never even smiled.
Mm.
And they drove on. Anyway, we came to a place called China. That was already on the other side of the Oder River, which became later DDR, East Germany. And oh, there's a train. And everybody who could got into this. This was a train not for people, like,
Freight train.
yes, a
Mhm.
freight train. So we got into one of those cars, and some people helped to get the children's buggy in there, and my mother took the handcart apart again, and one piece after the other, and so we had one side of that, and there was on the other side was a younger woman, end of 20s or so, with a little girl, nice little blonde girl with big blue eyes, and a grandma. They were on the other side with their blankets, right? So we put our blankets out and settled in to sleep. And Ingrid played for a while with that other little girl, Heidi. And anyway, if he had to pee at the far side, there was the in the floor there was a not quite tight, it was rotting away the wood. So that's where we would be.
Let it go through the train. Yeah.
Anyway, in the middle of the night, these freight cars, they have two doors. On this side, sliding
Uh-huh.
door, and on
And on
the
the
other
other.
side
Yeah.
too. And we had gotten all in from this side, and the other side, there was nothing. And from there, a young Russian came in the middle of the night. He had a flashlight. He looked at everybody. And my mother whispered again. And we were on one side of her,
Mm.
Crystal and I, and Ingrid on the other. And there was the baby in it. And she just whispered, "Shh, be quiet, be quiet. Just don't say anything. Don't. And he tried to rape that young woman. She fought him and said, Stalin saying, Niet, niet, no more, no more, niet. And he got so mad, and they were fighting, and finally he pushed her over, took his bayonet, and put it into her vagina up her.
Oh, jeez.
We saw that.
Yes.
And then he pulled that out, that gun, and came over to our place. He wasn't interested in the old granny, right?
Right.
And she held that little girl in her arms. And I could never understand why the mother didn't cry or something.
Right.
She must have been in such shock. And there was so much blood running. And so he came over and with his flashlight looked us over and opened his fly. And I couldn't believe that a young man, maybe 19 or 20, had such a big one. That was the first time I saw such a thing. And it practically jumped out. And he raped my mother right there, and we
Oh,
are holding on to her. Oh
oh,
my God,
God.
that's war for you. That's and it was
Yes.
over. They were not supposed to do that anymore,
No.
but they still did. And So Mom just whispered, "Don't cry, don't cry. He's gonna do that to you too." You know what we
Yes.
had seen there. And then he got up, closed um,
Fly.
his fly, went over to the other side and pushed that bayonet into the little girl's eyes, the big blue eyes.
Oh, Jesus.
And she just fell over. And then he came back and took the diaper that was hanging on the baby carriage, took the diaper and wiped the blood off. And then he went out the way he came. That was a night.
Oh my
And
God.
yes. And then in the morning, now we were alone with that granny, right? And she was crying. She
Of
was,
course.
and the other two people were dead by that time.
Yes.
And we didn't got much sleep, you can imagine, after this experience. And the only one who slept was the baby. And
Thank God, because if it had cried, he probably would have killed that too. So,
oh yeah, if my mom
yes.
would have fought him,
Yes.
same thing would happen
Yeah.
to all of
This
us.
this guy was just
Yeah,
beyond
he wanted
a
that,
creep.
and that was it.
Right.
Anyhow, the next morning, the train started to rattle,
Mm.
and it went back a little bit, then forward, and somebody yelled. By that time, we had opened the front our door too and looked out what was going on, and then somebody yelled, "It's going back to the east, to
Oh
what was
no.
now Poland, right?"
So you
But
had to jump out.
it's yeah, and we started my mother, and she said to me, she threw everybody out, and all the parts of the wagon, and even the buggy, and it landed on the four wheels. I could still not understand how that happened. We started to believe in God in some of these things, you know. And then I stood there, and she said, "Gila, jump!" And I was afraid because it's
It's moving. Yes.
it's quite high, you know.
Mm.
And she pushed me out, and then she jumped. And all our stuff was spread
Strewn.
over
Mm.
maybe 100 meters or more, because by that time the train rolled
Yeah.
away, and everybody had done the same. And but people didn't touch anybody else's stuff.
Right.
They were happy when they found theirs, right?
Yes.
And we found everything. And Mom she pounded, put us in the next train tracks that they were quite rushed, so we knew no train would probably come. So until we had everything, and then we marched off. And then she said, "The baby needs her coffee." We didn't have anything and to give the baby, you know, that fake coffee, and no water. And so she went to the station and said, I should stay with, I always had to stay with the kids.
Right.
And I felt I wasn't a kid anymore, you know, I
No.
was,
You have to,
was
you can't
aged.
help but grow up
Yeah.
quickly at this point. Yeah.
And so she trusted me, and she always asked me, "What are we going to do? What are we going
Mm.
to do?" And I always had an answer. And so she went to the station, and there was a station master, and he had a lunch bag and a bottle, like an empty beer bottle, with coffee. Everybody had fake coffee, Caro
Yeah.
coffee, called it, grain coffee. And so when my mom told him about the baby, he couldn't believe that she was still alive after
Right.
3 weeks living
Yes.
on that. And so he gave her all that. So she came back, and we each had a sandwich,
Oh,
a piece of it, and the baby had that fake coffee. And then she brought the bottle back because you couldn't get new ones, right? You had to keep what you had. And he said he is going to let us know if there's another train that goes west. He's going to let for sure, because he came to visit, and he was so sorry when he saw this little skeleton
yeah.
of a kid. And he gave us that coffee every day, and his wife made sandwiches for all of
Oh,
us.
bless him.
So we had to be quiet and in secret eat eat that, because
Yes.
everybody there
We're
had.
starving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, there came the day when he told my mom when she had to come over to get the coffee. Um, there is a train coming, but it's a real train. It's not a freight train. And I think it's going west, but I'll let you know. So he did. And sure enough, that afternoon, a train came and we all got in. And those trains, they had one room where there was more room for luggage
Hmm.
because not just the normal cabins, with the
Right.
seats, but this one had there were benches all around.
Right.
And in the middle was room for stuff. And it was packed. And people really helped each other again.
Yes.
They helped
Everybody's in
my
the
mom
same boat.
getting the baby in there,
Mm,
and the
mm,
parts of the. So anyway, the train started, and sure enough, it went west. But we didn't know where it was going. We couldn't
yeah.
care less. And people said, we don't care anymore. We are tired. If this goes back to the east, then it ought to be. And because there came a point during the night, because not many people slept.
Yeah.
Um, and it was probably the first and only time that my mom had her arm around my shoulder to keep me close. We had one of the rare seats, and Crystal on the other side. Ingrid slept on the floor, and the baby carriage was in the middle. And all of a sudden, the train stopped. We had no idea where we were. It was in the middle of the night. Everything was black. There was no lights,
Mm.
and then again you felt that start and go back, and
Oh no.
and then all of a sudden the train went to the other side. Up to now we were going forward, and all of a sudden we were going back, right?
Uh-uh.
Sitting, going
Hmm.
backwards. So they had changed the locomotive
Right.
to the other end from, and going that way. And people said, oh my God, we are going back east. We are going back. Well, we don't care anymore. So everybody, we don't care anymore.
Beyond exhaustion. Hmm.
Yeah. And that place was packed. So anyway, it went on for hours and hours and hours. And then we saw getting light, and the sun started to come up. And there were potato fields and there were grain fields, and I said to my mother, this doesn't look like there was a war. And she
Mm,
said, this is the western side of Germany, and the Russians devastated everything. The Americans just killed the big cities, but not the
mm,
land.
mm,
And there were cottages in these gardens, and people were doing things, hanging laundry or something.
mm.
It felt like this is a totally different life.
Yes.
And then the guy who had helped us getting in and out into this train, he came through and said, in about half an hour we are coming to the end of our line, and you will all have to get out. And there is Red Cross. There are Red Cross people with sandwiches and
Uh,
cookies and coffee and apple juice. And coffee is always, cacao coffee,
yeah.
green coffee. And but you all have to get out. So we are coming to the end, and that is Stralsund. And that's where we wanted to go in the first place,
Ah,
because our aunt, Tutti with the four boys, lived just across the bridge.
perfect. So did you end up there?
Yeah, but you have no idea what that was like. There were four post checkups on the bridge, Russians. And when we got the permit at where the Red Cross people told us where to
Mm,
go, and they had given us 4 sandwich packages and a bag with cherries. And by that time now it was June, right? And the first cherries were ripe. And oh, I wanted to eat those cherries.
Yes.
And my mom said, "No, no, no." And the Red Cross lady uh, said, "Don't, your stomachs cannot handle that now after so
Right.
long not eating anything. And
Yes.
so just leave it. Your mom is going to give you the sandwiches whenever, you are at your aunt's, just over the bridge." So we had to go to the other station where the train stopped for, but not in the train anymore. It's just
Mm,
walking. And lots of bomb damage and
mm,
the streets, ripped open. And so we ended up at this place where we had to get the permit to get over the bridge because the Germans had also blown up part of the bridge.
mm.
And the Russians had made
A
a,
temporary bridge.
a side thing also
Mm,
on boats.
right.
And so little by little,
Yeah.
things could get over that bridge. And it was not tight,
Bouncy. Yeah.
because of the waves, underneath.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so we come to the first stop, and my mom showed the permit, and he said, "No good, no good, yet, go back." And we thought, why should we go back? But we stood there and waited, and then we saw other people pushing something over to give them, and they had to go. So she took one of the sandwich bags and pushed it over, and we could go. That was the first stop.
Right, Brie.
There was a second one, and the Red Cross lady must have known that. Why did she give us 4 and the bag of
Right.
chairs? So happened the same thing across the whole bridge. No, go back. Now, they wouldn't even have let us get back because they
Right.
wanted then something too, right?
Yes.
So we could see the house of our relatives already.
Mm,
And my uncle was at the station at the end of that bridge, and he worked for the railway. And so finally, the sandwiches were gone. And we were on the last part of the bridge, just down the hill and then through a
yeah.
tunnel, and we were home. But this last guy, we didn't have anything anymore, we
Mm,
thought. And my mom lost it. She took the baby, went to the railing, and wanted to, and she just yelled, "I will drown us all because I can't handle it anymore.
right.
I'm at the end. I'm at the end of my rope. I can't go on." And the fact that she took the baby out, she also took the blanket fell out that the baby was covered with. And there was the bag with the cherries. And the guy looked and says, "Oh, okay, all right, took the cherries and let us go." And Crystal and I, we had pulled on mom's skirts, to pull up
Yes.
on that railing. And so we ended up finally at my aunt's house. And the story from there is quite interesting too. For people who haven't gone through this, they
How
will
do they
be,
understand?
they
Yeah.
will be surprised how things got organized again during the next few months,
Mm,
from end of June to July, August, September. And then the typhoid fever broke out in the middle of the summer.
oh, God.
And the Swedes had donated. See, the island of Rügen, where we ended up, is just across the Baltic in Sweden, right? And at one time in the 1700s, they even owned this island, but it was closer to Germany, right? Anyhow, so they donated the vaccination stuff for the
Mm,
typhoid fever, and everybody had to come. That was a must now, the Red
mm,
Cross, to get the first week, 3 weeks, 3 shots. for against getting this disease. And I remember I was happy I got my shot and I knew I had typhoid fever, so I know what that was like, you know.
Right.
And the Russian doctor saved me. I didn't
Hmm.
mention that. He
No.
had one serum and
Wow.
he said to my mom, and I couldn't even speak anymore, right?
Mm.
And this Russian doctor, where she took me, she took my 11-year-old body on her arms to this school where this Russian doctor was, and there were lots of people in beds, dozens and dozens. And he said, yeah, your girl has diphtheria, but I only have one serum. If I give her that, she may live. But if I don't give it to her, she will surely die, and somebody else will live. And if I give it to somebody else, your daughter will die. And I, with my old eyes,
Hmm.
like Ivan had said, I looked at that doctor and didn't blink, just looked at him, and
Stared
he
at him.
made a decision. I got the vaccination. And that happened in the toilet, one stair flight down in these old schools, you know. And I remember there was this box on the ceiling with a pool for water.
Yes, yes.
And I had to bend over that toilet. My mom pulled down my panties and he came the stairs down and I looked, the door was open and he looked wildly around himself.
Yes.
He came, put it in my bum. It hurt,
Yes.
but then
Saved your
he
life.
got out and looked around again. And I remember saying to my mom, maybe he wasn't allowed to do this,
Exactly.
to use that on a German girl. And
Mm.
anyway, that's how I lived. And I was not in the hospital. I was like with diphtheria, usually 6 weeks hospital, right?
Right.
No, I had to walk. I had to
Uh,
walk with these thousands of people next to the Russians that was
wow.
then. And I remember once I had to pee, and I said to my mom, you know, and we were slower now, and the people
Mm.
behind us pushed,
Yeah.
and she said, oh, just go down the ditch and do it, and I'll come back and get you when I found a place where I can get across this ditch, and on the other side was a forest, and leave the kids and come back and get you. When she came back, I was lying there in the midst, the panties around the ankles, in the midst of a patch of wild strawberries, those small ones. And I had reached for one. I was so hungry, right? And fainted and fell over. And I was lying there, panties at the ankles. And my mom was back 1.5 hours later. And it took her another 1.5 to get back to where the kids were, where there was a path into that forest across a steep ditch. They were still okay because nobody wanted to bother with anybody else's kids, right?
No.
Nobody, they were all.
Looking after their own.
So those things happened during that time, and there were people who died on the way, and they
Of
were
course.
left where it happened.
Left to rot. Yes.
And it was just horrible. And then now to jump forward, I think we are nearing the end.
Of this chapter, you're coming back to talk about the others, but
Because this chapter, we lived there, we got the shots from the Swedes, the Red Cross. I got the first one and I hopped around the cobblestone street because we lived 2 kilometers away at the station, and this was the village, right, where we had to go. And Crystal, my next sister, cried because it had hurt.
mhm,
And I said, Crystal, but we won't get typhoid fever. So that's
mm,
good. We have to
yeah.
come back next week. And there were trees on both sides. And on one side was a small ditch with grass. And I went over there and 1 foot here, 1 foot there, and all of a sudden I found some coins,
Ah,
just German pennies, for coins.
right.
And oh my God, and I thought, that's luck, that's luck.
Treasure.
Right,
Yes.
right. So I picked them up and Well, what happened? I never got the second shot because I got typhoid fever.
Oh no.
And I was taken 30 kilometers away to a school that was also turned by the Red Cross into a hospital. And I was 6 weeks unconscious.
Wow.
So how I lived through that, I don't know.
No, considering your body would have been so weak from everything that you'd gone
Yeah,
through.
and it was in a room when I woke up. There were lots of women in beds around me, and they were all kind of clapping and happy and yelling for the nurse, for the Red Cross lady. And they were called sisters. They were not
Yes.
nuns, but
Right. Yes.
sisters. And the girl has woken up, the girl. And they came and she talked to me and I just closed the eyes. She said, no, 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 don't close your eyes. Don't leave
Mm-hmm.
me. Stay with me. And it
Mm-hmm.
took me, and everybody was happy around me that I woke up and I thought, what did I do that they
You're alive.
And then she asked me if I was hungry, and I thought for a moment, and I thought, yeah, I'm hungry. And she said, I will get you something to eat. And I said, I don't know if that will stay with me because I may soil the bed. Oh, she laughed. You have done in 6 weeks, you have done more than that. And I couldn't understand what she talked about. Six
Right.
weeks? Did I sleep 6 weeks?
Mm.
Well, I did. And the first food I got there was a slice of homemade bread with cottage cheese and
Mm.
strawberry jam on top.
Oh,
I've
heaven.
never eaten such a thing at
Yeah.
home, but
Right.
boy, did it ever taste good.
Yes.
And you know what, Sarah? I still like that. I still put jam on my cottage cheese.
You know
Anyway,
that what you've shared here today is what people need to understand. We're seeing different horrors, as you said. Germany is
the
raising its
same
Nazi
thing
flag again.
is, yeah, they don't know. Take Gaza.
It's all like a
They
movie
don't know where to
fantasy.
go.
Right. They
Yeah,
don't understand the horrors and
no,
the atrocities and the inhumanity. And, we're seeing it play out in the States in one way. Germany is raising its head again. And a lot of that is because it wasn't taught in schools. It was ignored. And
yeah,
if we do not address the horrors of the past, we repeat them or we
yeah,
give credence for them to be
yeah.
repeated. And this is why this story today is so important. I do
I
want you
like to,
back.
excuse me, I like to add one more thing. We talked about you thought I was Jewish. No,
Yes.
yeah. When I was 7 years old, I was the best in the school because I couldn't wait to read and, I
Right.
didn't need my grandma anymore. I could do it
Yes.
myself. Right? So I really worked hard and I could read and write and I wrote little stories
Mm.
and was 7. And so, as a thank you for my granny, she took me to her brother who lived in a place called Zidow's close to Stettin, which became Polish later. And they lived in a beautiful villa in a park too. And they had a maid, and uh, uh, we we didn't. We had to do everything ourselves, right? And
Hmm.
an outhouse, and they didn't because
Right.
they had a thing with a pull, and
Yeah, the
everything
indoor
was
plumbing.
flushed
Yeah.
away. Yeah. And this the Uncle Paul, we called him Uncle Paul, and it was my granny's brother. His wife was also Martha, so Tante Martha. And she told me I should stay in bed and the maid will bring me my breakfast.
Wow.
And I said, no, 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 I want to be with you. I want to hear everything. And I was always curious as a kid. I
Yeah.
needed to know where I was, what it was, what was going on, what people talked about, because I'd learned the more you know, the better.
Yes.
Anyway, so no, no, I didn't want to stay in bed. So anyway, I ate with them. They had a white tablecloth. They had saucers under their cups.
Hmm.
Oh my God.
Hmm.
And they had wonderful food and everything. And we were there for a few days. And they took us to Stettin, which is a big city with a huge harbor where lots of ships had left for Boston with Jews. And one day, and then they showed us, they said the gray ships are all warships. The white ones are all private ones, lots of big harbor. Oh, wow, that was something for me. And that afternoon, when we came back, they had a visitor, a couple, a man and a wife, beautifully dressed, and a boy about 2 years older than me. And and they were staying for coffee, like in German, 4 o'clock, coffee and cake, right? Before dinner is just very small. And so I really liked this guy, Gerhard. And so the next day we were invited to visit them. And I thought I was in a castle, but it was actually an apartment, but a big one, but beautifully, beautifully furnished with Persian rugs and bookcases and oh my God, and wonderful pictures on the walls and Gerhard took me to his room and he had a whole wall of books and he said, those are all Karl May books and my dad buys me a new one if there's a new one coming out, and here it's the Hardy books, right? And there it's
Right.
Karl May books. And they were all about the American Indians and the guy who'd written them, this Karl May, he had never been there, but it was all his fantasy.
Yes.
And I remembered some names of these books later because he said he will let me read some later. And he didn't want to give me any, but I would let you read if you come back visiting. Well, it was about 3 weeks later when there was a letter or a telegram. There was no postal. There was postal service, but it took too long and all.
Yeah.
People sent telegrams that they have. No, that's not true. Yes. They got a telegram, Granny got a telegram that they had to leave, and Gerhard is with my uncle Paul and Tante Martha.
Mhm.
And the parents had to leave with the last ship because they were Jewish. But we didn't know that. And Uncle
Right.
Paul and Tante Martha, they couldn't care less because they were
Right.
just like everybody else, right?
Exactly.
And he was a professor at the university there, and now they had a chance, but they could not take the boy.
Why?
No kids, no
What
kids.
happened to the children?
Well, whatever. Most Germans hit them, but nobody talks about that. That's
God,
another
you'd
thing
think the
people
children
don't
are the
talk
ones you want
about.
to get out.
Yeah. Anyway, the parents left and they trusted Uncle Paul and Tante Martha to raise, and since they lived in a house separate from the city, in this park. And so they hid him. And it was just 2 weeks later when the Russians came there. So they said, that's their boy, right?
Right.
He didn't look very much Jewish, but
Right.
anyway, he stayed with them until he got married. But that's another story.
But he survived the war.
And they declared him as their son.
Right.
And since after the Russians came, and everybody had to get out when the Poles came. Nobody had passports, nobody had birth certificates.
Right.
So they just declared him
Yeah.
their boy and gave them their name, right? So he
Good for
grew
them.
up instead of Gerhard with his Jewish name, Gerhard Hartwig. And the ship with the parents on the way to Boston was hit by a torpedo and sank.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
So in the end, he was lucky.
those are the stories that nobody talks about.
No,
These
that's
are
the reason why we're doing this show. It needs to be talked about.
ordinary people
Yes.
had to take the brunt.
Yes.
People like my parents who really kind of took care of Peter Kaczmarek, so
Mm.
that he was okay. Once we had strawberries were always covered with straw in the winter. And the straw was taken aside in the mornings and put on the side so that the strawberries could ripen in the sun, right? And we had cats outside, and my granny always put plates with milk and food out. They ate what we ate. Now
Yeah,
kids have to, cats have
right.
to get different food, but no, our cats got what.
Yes.
Anyway, and we were wondering that cat food is always gone, and up to now it usually wasn't. And then one day, Granny and I, we picked, Crystal was there too, so we picked strawberries, and I see that straw moves.
Mm.
And I said, Granny, Omi, there is something that straw moves. And then a head comes out, a pistol comes out and said, get me private, normal civil clothing. I ran away and I have to, so but the kids stay here. So we
Mm.
had to stay there. And I remember we were not really afraid, but he
Mm.
had a gun. He bought us
Right.
just a pistol, not a big gun.
Yeah.
And Granny went, and on the way, she saw a girl in the neighbor's garden, and Ellie, and she said, go down and tell the master, there is something going on and he should come.
Mm.
And my dad came running. Granny went inside and got a pile of private
Close.
clothing from Uncle Kurt's,
Mm.
And the guy came out, and my father said, where did you come from? And he was very nice to him. He called him my son and
Mm.
said, my son, you can get away with this, they will get you. You should really go back to your um, army or your part
Regiment. Mm-hmm.
and declare that you got lost or
Uh-huh.
whatever. And he said, no, Master, you have no idea how it is. They have lost the war, but they don't know it yet. They don't see it, but they will shoot me no matter what. If I come back or if I don't come back, I will be shot. So, but still, he wanted to get, and he was the one that ate all that cat food, right?
Right.
And so father talked him into leaving. He said, you put us all in such danger, please. Here, get dressed and, go. We will take care of that uniform. And he burned it in the
Yeah.
blacksmith's fires there.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, 2 weeks later, the story went through the village that they found a young man not far from our village, and he had shot himself.
Oh.
No
Oh.
food, no way to go,
Right.
and 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 there were so many people who hid other people, right? If they would have found out that we listened to Churchill in the evenings, and it
Yes.
was always the end, and that's the end for me now too. Lily Marlene. La, 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 la.
Mm-hmm.
And I still know the words
Yeah.
of that in German. And that's Churchill's hour. Well, he was a translator, right? He
Right.
translated to Germans. And so we were always up to date what's going on. But if they would have found out, the Nazis would have killed us.
Exactly. I mean,
And
considering,
I'm
I mean,
sure there were more people who did that.
right. Yeah,
I always
exactly.
thought, oh, it's the big cities that have the trouble, not
Yeah.
the village. We didn't have.
And you had, kind of quintessentially escaped a great deal until the Russians came.
Yes,
So,
that's
that's,
right.
I mean, look, war is just disgusting. It's just profiteering. And it's
Oh,
just
sure it is.
people,
Yeah,
using it, the people that were raping, the people that were killing, they're small-minded people without a conscience, right? And the leaders, it's all about power, and we're seeing this play out right now with
that's
Putin,
what,
the Israeli
yeah,
guy,
everywhere.
It's
Yeah.
all power hungry, and they're small minds, they're small hearts, they're small people needing to be big, and they do it in a violent, vicious way. But I'm so glad that we only just talked about this story today, because you're going to come back and talk about when you came to Canada,
It's very interesting what comes next.
right? And
It's very interesting when everything was over and things got slowly back to normal, and how in 1948, 3 years later, right,
mhm,
the two Germanys came
yes,
about, West Germany and then
yeah,
East Germany followed. And during those years that we lived in East Germany, the things that happened, it's just people would not believe it. And
I
people
know,
think, oh, they say, what our children inherit. You know, we we inherited nothing.
mm,
It didn't matter that my mom was disinherited. There was nothing to inherit
right,
anyway. Everything was lost, right?
yeah,
And
everybody was leveled,
yeah,
so
there was
yeah,
absolutely nothing. And Hitler and his big Bonzen, as we called them, they just kept on going and had more people killed, in the different wars that he started out. And he should have learned from Napoleon.
we should have, just like a lot of things should have been
Napoleon
learned.
had learned that Russia cannot be taken in winter.
Yeah,
And Hitler started to send the troops that way.
mm,
And
exactly.
I had a friend whom I called my adopted brother that comes in the next
Mm,
session. He was in that Russian army, in that part, that the army that was sent to Russia. And he told me a few things, but at the beginning, he said, Gila, I don't want to talk about it. But the
yeah,
longer I knew him,
yes.
and I used to take Canadian groups to a German health spa. And that's all from the second book. And he started to have a little more trust. And I
But he
heard
also
them
knew that
watching.
you understood because of what you'd been through, right?
It
And
just,
for like what you have shared today with most people is fantastical. Like this, did this really
they
happen?
think that's all fiction,
Yeah,
right? No,
and it's like nobody could do that to each other. And
no,
yes, and we're seeing it now. And
yeah,
it's like, when do we learn as humanity? When
yeah.
do we learn? So,
And you know what? You know when this book got the title?
mhm,
We don't talk about that. When I wanted to write or
right.
was pushed to write it,
Yeah.
I asked my two living aunts that were young at the time,
Mm,
19 and 21. And they said, what? Do you want to write a book about that?
hmm.
You're crazy. We don't talk about that. And
Exactly.
that was the answer I got from every single one. And now I had written health books, but I had never written nonfiction, a
Exactly.
warm memorial or something. And so I took a course for memoir writing at the Vancouver Island
Hmm.
University. And there was a lady, she was 78 at the time, I was a bit younger. And I asked her, and she was German born, but she didn't speak much German. And she grew up in Canada already because her parents had a chance to leave when she was 4 years old. And I said, have you ever asked your parents what it was like at the time? And she said, Giselle, by that time I was already the Canadian Giselle, um, they always said, we don't talk about that.
Exactly.
And when I came home and I told my partner at that time, and he said, you know what?
That's the
That's the
title.
title for your book. Because my working title was You Got Old Eyes,
Mm,
going back to that blondie,
right. Yes.
But this one, I
And
mean,
this one is so apropos. My
yeah,
father was a squadron leader. I mean, his family were in timber import. His biggest client was German. He was in Germany when the war broke out. He had
Ah,
numerous German friends, they numerous colleagues, and
hmm,
they had to smuggle him out. Right. And so now he is a squadron leader, protecting the bombers, bombing his friends, and it always stayed with him. Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
there's how many times over and over people didn't want that war, and you can't clump, all Germans were bad. No, there are so
no,
many Germans who did not want that war. But if you
no.
didn't fight when you were told to fight, then
Then you were there.
you were eliminated, right?
You
So,
know the famous 20th of July assassination
mm,
attempt for Hitler. It's
yeah,
quite well known, but
yes,
for
they
people
did a
who
movie
are
on it.
not into history, they probably don't know. But it went wrong,
Yes,
and Hitler lived. And
yes,
what happened
unfortunately.
afterwards? 6,000, nearly 7,000 people were shot because of it, because he blamed his officers from the First World War that
Mm,
had to swear that now they serve him, right?
mm,
Including Rommel, who is another famous name. And I have a story about him, another author who
mm.
knew his wife. They're both dead now. And it's it's
For
not
them, there was
it's
just like you did me wrong, which, there is a certain president in our neighbors to Canada that it's vengeance. You do me wrong, annihilation. Never
yeah, yeah,
accountability.
yeah.
Never, it's just like, brrr, right?
And the man I married later,
Mhm.
the answer I got an answer for my letter,
Which is the
which
next show,
was
folks.
and I got to Canada. His family, his father was the one of the highest in the German Navy. His brother was the highest judge in the German Air Force. He was in Nuremberg at that big process. People
Mhm.
have known about that or heard about it at least. But he wasn't killed because he knew a secret that later was revealed, right? And because of it.
Well, that's the next show,
Oh,
folks.
I tell you, and I married into that family, and every family member, grannies, grandpas, mother, father, nephews, uncles, were put against the wall, and the Germans had to shoot them. And they always had several shooters so that none of them knew which one of them had the live ammunition in his. But because of that
Yeah,
assassination, Hitler killed
everyone.
that many people who he thought were involved.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Evil,
Anyhow,
evil, evil. But that is the next story, folks. So we want you to come
oh,
back. And, I know this has been a long show and I don't care because what you've learned today is something that we need to know in order for things not to be repeated again. But it's also a story of resilience, of, like everybody coming together, supporting each other, when to be quiet, when to stand up, when to kind of lay down, so to speak. Um, it is absolutely horrific with what was put through anybody going through war. You look at Ukraine right now, look at Gaza right now,
yeah,
even Iran
yeah,
right now. It's little men, just looking at this as a chess set and moving parts without ever acknowledging there's human beings on the other side, and they don't care. And it's
no.
time for us to hold them accountable. If we do not want to go down this road again, accountability has to be ahead of these leaders that are so happy to press the war button, and atrocities, lack of conscience, just absurd. I mean, the animals. I mean, no, I'm sorry, it's an insult to animals. It's an insult. Animals don't do this to each other, right? They're just humanoids, and and it just is. It's what drives a person to be so detached from other humanity that they can go and do these atrocities to humanity. And that
Mhm.
is a question that we're actually at that fold right now. And we need to really look at how much do we stand by and watch before we stand up and
And
support
I
each
think
other.
the young people have to know.
They do.
because they get excited. They want to be soldiers again, like
Yes.
in Germany, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yes.
And their fathers or grandfathers had gone through this, and they might have heard something about it, but it's another generation. And especially the East Germans are very much into this new AFD
Yeah.
thing, and because I remember when the wall fell down and the East Germans
Mhm.
were flowing over
Yeah.
to West Germany, and I happened that same year be in Bad Wörishofen with a Canadian group, a health bar group. It was Canadians. I had 23 people at the time, and they asked me, why are not all Germans happy that the wall is gone, that they
Mm.
can travel, that they can go back and forth? And well, all the East Germans became second-class citizen,
Exactly.
including
Exactly.
including me. But
And a
hmm,
total different mentality too, from in the
yeah,
way the
they
restrictions they had and to the freedom you had. You can't expect them just
yeah,
to
and they
meld in,
wished
right?
they wished they would have the old orders again, because
Yes.
now in East Germany you could buy anything.
Right.
So they started stealing.
Mm. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
before, the police had a hand on everything, and they
Yeah.
said we had order, so we were better off when it
Hmm.
was, well, anyway.
Okay, folks, so you're going to come back for the next one, which is all about how she married a Canadian, um, and uh,
Oh,
and
people
that
go,
20-year chapter, and then there will be another chapter afterwards on her next book because this woman is just an encyclopedia of
yeah,
experience that most people would never even have a fraction, not even a page of. So
good. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's just
I
great
want
to
people
talk to
to
you.
go and look at all your books. So, of course, they can go to your site, Giselle Roeder, which is GISELLEROEDER.com. But you can also go find her on Facebook and on LinkedIn under her same name and reach out to her, have a conversation with her. Numerous books, apart from these ones, have been written, and you can find them all on Amazon and
Mhm.
under her name. And she's written numerous books, which we will touch on in one of the shows. But the next show will be on her journey coming to Canada and what that was all about. And but
People will have a ball.
you are an extraordinary woman who has just not only just survived, but there are so many people that could have been so bitter and so angry or so traumatized. And you kind of went from the frying pan into another fire. But at the same time, it's like who you are today. You are joyful, you are full of life, you're still full of passion, and that is extraordinary in itself. So I look forward so much to the next chapter in your story.
Thank you.
Until next time, folks, this is a lot to take in today, and you might want to take it in parts, but please, the discussion needs to be made. If we do not want these atrocities to happen again, and they are happening in war-torn places, they are happening. They are happening by MAGA, they are happening. We have to put a stop to it. Unless we acknowledge it, we cannot put a stop to things. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you to listen to right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Come and hear the illumination that's going to shed light on your path.
Find your path with the knowledge of others.